Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Niz. I haven't made an actual video in a while. I'm gonna try something new. I opened up the Awesomenauts balance change ideas for 4.4. While they're not official yet, they're still in the Google Docs and haven't been actually put in the game. They're in the beta. And I'd actually want to talk about the ones for Raylan and her auto attack because of course that caught my eye. So this video is going to be going over the changes and why I think they're a poor idea. Mostly the second one. And maybe have a few suggestions or alternative ideas. One of my issues is that cooldown snipe is pretty much unnecessary, and allow me to explain the reasons why. Raylan snipe isn't like other bursts. It's not as dependent on its availability, but more dependent on the positioning of you and the enemy. A rule of thumb for snipe to work is that you have to be in a less compromising position than your opponent. Now my primary question is who's this upgrade for, because Raylans that spam snipe most likely will not use this upgrade because it requires for them to be in basic attack range, which they most likely won't be because they'll be using snipe to keep a safe distance and constantly pick at the enemy's health. While Raylans who focus on using basic attacks most likely won't have the snipe on cooldown because they'll probably use it as a finisher, and they probably would just want the damage upgrade instead of a cooldown upgrade. So I feel like this upgrade lacks use due to the fact that it rewards a different playstyle than the one that it's fit for. You see, this upgrade worked well on Lone Star because its Dynamite is ideal at close range where the blaster encourages you to get close. Although Dynamite could be telegraphed from the sound in the channel, it was much more immediate. It worked better with the playstyle. It didn't leave him vulnerable, it allowed him to land more shots on the enemy immediately after if they were still alive, and rewarded consistent landing of shots, as well as increased attack speed, giving it purpose over damage in certain builds. Now compare that to Ponytail, where on hit for a second it reduces the cooldown by 30%. This upgrade might have been defendable if it at least gave attack speed a purpose, but it doesn't even do that because as long as you land every other shot with their base attack speed, you get the full effect. So here's the next question. Is it worth getting over Cassette Desk Machine? For people who don't know, Cassette Desk Machine allows you to have 2 seconds of cooldown reduction with no gimmick, no ties. So I did the math, with 30% of the cooldown reduced for a second, that'd be 0.3 seconds constantly until the cooldown's done. Oh man, that education's really paying off. So for 10 seconds, assuming that you're constantly and consistently landing the procs, that would reduce the cooldown by 3 seconds. Now that's the idea on paper. Well, the values are already wrong. The cooldown starts when you activate snipe, so that's including the 2 seconds minimum of entering snipe mode, firing, and exiting snipe mode. So if you're landing shots on an enemy not consistently, it'd be reduced by 2.4 seconds maximum. But you most likely won't get that because the opponent will either be dead because you sniped them, running away because you're going to snipe them, or knocked back from the knockback from snipe. And at that point you might as well have just used that 220 solar to buy a stage of pump rifle. So this gimmick upgrade is 2.4 seconds off of your cooldown, best case scenario. Or you can go with the cheaper, more reliable, less demanding alternative. It has occurred to me that it can stack both for super low cooldown and snipe. Now ignoring what I said earlier, that still damages the potential of receiving Ponytail. Since it's not a straight up cooldown reduction number and rather is a percentage cooldown, if you get the cooldown reduction, it actually reduces the value of the speed up. So this upgrade ends up being less cost effective and less reliable than an upgrade that currently exists. And not only is the difference between Cassette Desk Machine's cooldown and Ponytail's cooldown at its prime almost unnoticeable, the upgrades don't quite cooperate with each other either. So, to dance on the grave of this upgrade idea, I would like to offer some alternatives. The first idea is more damage per consecutive shot. If this upgrade were to replace receiving Ponytail, there are 2 important factors to it. The maximum stats have to be higher than receiving Ponytail's current damage boost on its own. Secondly, that the stacks are a number rather than a percentage. I thought it'd be a given for the second rule, but thirdly, it shouldn't stack with any damage items. It's a more interesting gimmick than straight up damage, it rewards consistent aim, and it fits the character very well being a sniper. And also, if it doesn't scale with damage upgrades, it's less likely to become a mandatory in the HC Bomb build. But although attack speed would always be inferior to HC Bomb and Burst, it would give attack speed a far superior DPS. It also includes risk and reward. Sure, you're dishing out more damage because you're firing more often, but there's a higher chance that a shot will go stray and you won't hit anything, and your damage will have to start over. Oh, also this would have to be enemy not so that they don't get all the stacks on droids and then hit somebody with the HC bomb for 1,000,000 damage. Now the issue here is that this would probably be a bit tricky to code and there's probably much, easier alternatives, but I think that this is a more interesting approach. Heck, I might even be overcomplicating consecutive shots. It could probably be simpler than that. I just think that it'd be really nice to have something for attack speed. The next one is that basic attack applies a mark. I've heard a lot of ideas about a mark system. My favorite one so far is that mark will make snipe do more damage on an enemy. My issue here is that it'd probably have to be one mark at a time for the damage to be worth anything. Because if the damage is high from the mark and you're able to mark the entire team, the damage output that you can have on the entire team potentially it would be ridiculous. My favorite idea so far is the mark applying a damage over time, so that if you hit somebody and it isn't quite in the kill threshold of snipe, you can still finish them off with a damage over time if they don't have a way to counter it. It might also be my bias of wanting to land some sort of damage on the Froggy G's that dash out of all of my snipes. The final idea is the most unimpressive, but it's also the most practical. The last suggestion is putting HC Bomb's effect in the basic attack throw and changing HC Bomb instead. I say this because it's probably a lot easier to come up with a time rift upgrade rather than trying to come up with a basic attack upgrade that's viable and also balanced. My only other complaint about this is that although Ponytail would be changed, nothing would really change about the HC Bomb build except that HC Bomb would be weaker and that you would have one extra option for your time rift. I actually got pretty close to cutting this idea altogether because I realized that this would actually be a pretty big blow for Pierce HC altogether, and you'd probably only use this ability to commit to HC Bomb in general. Now for which one I personally think should be used? None of them. Now I know I'm biased with the way I play Raylan, but I believe for her basic attack row there's nothing wrong with her current upgrades. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's nothing wrong with the ones that people use. Okay, maybe Pierce is a bit strong, but nobody really noticed that until her clear was nerfed. I really see nothing wrong with her basic attack row. It's pretty similar to a lot of characters actually, to deal more damage to one person, or deal damage to more. I understand Ronimo's wanting to make upgrades more interesting and have less duplicates and rows, but I see nothing wrong with having some simple upgrades. Awesomenauts is a pretty simple game compared to other MOBAs, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's easy to pick up, it's fun. Have you seen the description to new Receiving Ponytail? Landing a Proto Blaster shot on an Awesomenaut speeds up Snipe's cooldown by 30% for 1 second. It doesn't even sound like it should be in the game. It even sounds out of place for a cooldown upgrade compared to Bovinian Postcard. These changes are supposed to give the basic attacks more diversity, but funny enough, I've never felt so limited. As ashamed of it as I am, if I wanted to snowball off a Snipe in Awesomenauts and not build basic attack, I could buy Monkey Hand. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that's changed, but why would I get Monkey Hand now? Her range is just fine, and the travel time for the bullet, it's pretty easy to miss. Not to mention poor Joe Doll. This here was attack speed's chance to get a vague resemblance of some sort of worth. Instead, it was ignored and its competitor was buffed to the point where it's just undeniably the inferior choice. You could have at least defended that Joe Doll and Skull Bracelet had the same DPS, but now it doesn't even have that. Now what's its defense? It's cheaper? A little. But it doesn't scale with HC, so if you want a damage build, you can't use it. It looks like this is just being put in for the sake of innovation. I could be wrong, but I can't imagine a whole lot of people actually asked for this. At this rate, a bunch of the builds will just be Cat Air Freshener, Skull Bracelet, and Alien Hand. Because the builds can promise a lot of variety and gimmicks, but they're just not as good as the reliable numbers, even in the senses where they would have the advantage. I mean, for God's sakes, this cooldown gimmick hardly keeps up with the regular cooldown reduction upgrade. There's a bunch of gimmicks basic attacks can have, it's just that most of them would either not work on Raylan or would be too strong. So my thoughts are to leave basic attack damage alone. If you really want to give her more variety in her basic attacks, a good start would be making some of these upgrades worth looking at.